One of the things that we found it useful to think about in terms of characterizing the scope and scale of the energy innovation challenge that lies ahead of us is to think about this in terms of three waves of innovation. Each wave breaking over the economy at a different time, gathering momentum at a different rate, but each wave needing to be pursued simultaneously now. And the three waves, as we think about them, are first of all an energy efficiency wave of innovation, where it's possible to imagine really significant improvements in energy efficiency in a wide range of parts of the economy. Buildings, where 40% of the energy that we use is consumed. 70% of the electricity that we use is consumed in building. Enormous opportunities for efficiency improvements that can probably be set in motion effectively over the next decade, in part because this is not primarily a story about the need for new technology. It's mainly a story about improvements or innovations in business models, institutional innovations that will accelerate the rate at which energy efficiency is upgraded. And there are many things here that we can talk about, but that at least is the first wave, breaking over the economy over the next decade, say. The second wave is about technologies that are primarily on the supply side, low-carbon technologies that we know about: nuclear, solar, wind, carbon capture and sequestration, perhaps. These are technologies that we know about today, but that in many, if not most cases, are too expensive or otherwise have problems that lead to difficulties in scale-up. We might include in this list energy storage technologies, particularly at the grid scale. Those are technologies which we can imagine being deployed on a large scale, assuming continued improvements and reductions in cost, over a period beginning, say, around 10 years from now, 2020 or so, and then over the next 2 or 3 decades, large-scale deployment of these new technologies, things that we know. And then the third wave, which we can think about, which may possibly arise after the middle part of the century, involving fundamentally new breakthrough technologies based on perhaps radical advances in the way energy is stored, the way it's transported, fundamental improvements in materials. Many different things can be imagined, but of course we don't know at this point what they will be. All that we know is that if we don't invest today in these fundamental areas of fundamental research, we're not likely to see such radical breakthroughs arising at all. But I think what this pattern of waves of innovation tells us, or what we should learn from this pattern, is that because of the massive scale of the energy sector and the massive scale of the energy infrastructure, it's very difficult to imagine fundamentally new inventions that are still at the lab stage or that we haven't even yet thought of playing a major role on a large scale in our energy system much before the middle part of the century. So what that means is that what we have to do over the next 3 or 4 decades, which really is by many accounts the critical period for reducing our carbon emissions, something that, of course, people don't talk. It's become very unfashionable to talk about this in Washington at the moment, but not, by the way, in almost any other capital around the world where the issue of climate change is certainly very much on the agenda, unlike here in Washington, here in the United States. But if we are going to make significant inroads into this problem, we really do have to achieve a decoupling of economic growth from carbon emissions by the middle part of the century. And the only way that we can do that, given the very long lead times for development and commercialization and then large-scale deployment, penetration of new technologies into the marketplace, the only way we can hope to achieve that is using technologies that we're already largely aware of. They may not be competitive economically today, but we know what they are. We can point at them. We know how they work. The task is to improve them aggressively, but basically incrementally between now and the middle part of the century, while at the same time focusing on this longer-term research agenda, which we might expect, or might hope at least, to result in fundamental breakthroughs in our energy supply and use patterns in the second half of the century.